just want to make sure that I reiterate, turn down your phones and make sure that you speak loudly and clearly during the Q&A session. For those of you who are seeking continuing education credits, you just need to sign in on the sign-in sheet. And I want to go ahead and introduce our speakers. We have Andrew Schwach. He manages the Mid-Atlantic programming at the Land Trust Alliance. And then we also have Tricia Aspinwall, and she is the Land Conservation Manager at the Nature Conservancy. So with that, I'll turn it over.
Thank you so much. First of all, to the Watershed Institute for putting on this great event, TCNJ for hosting us, and for you all for making the time to join us late on a Friday afternoon. Little bit of an informal crowd. That's great. We'll get to know each other. We've got time built in so that we won't leave you sitting in your chairs and not participating in our session. Again, I'm Andrew Schwach. I manage Mid-Atlantic programming at the Alliance. The Land Trust Alliance is a membership-based organization of about 1,000 nonprofits, but also affiliate members who all come together around the idea of permanently protecting land for a variety of different uses, water quality being one of the biggies. Why am I talking about regional conservation partnerships at a watershed conference? Glad I asked. We at the Alliance see a very big need to support this model of collaboration among our membership for a host of different reasons. And one of them is that we ask a lot of them. Mara in the back can tell you, the Land Trust Alliance wants our organizational members to protect water quality, advance climate resiliency, and practice community-centered conservation. The average land trust has 2 staff and a budget of $150,000 a year. So those are 3 very big things that we're asking of them when they pay us membership dues. That's kind of a, that's a bit rich. So we look for ways to support their work in ways that don't overtax, overburden the very limited resources these organizations have at their disposal. Regional conservation partnerships is a great model to help those organizations do more with what they've got. And so that's one big reason. Another one is regional conservation partnerships, broadly speaking, is much more consistent with the way that an increasing proportion of the workforce wants to operate. I think the average person in the conservation workforce sector is around 30, late 30s, early 40s, depending on our latest census, which I think comes out next year. Folks of that age and younger are much more inherently collaborative in how they view their workplaces and the work that they do, and what motivates them to show up, work long hours for less pay than they could probably command in other sectors. Being brutally honest, that's part of what we do, is we study these trends nationally. Younger participants in the workforce really like collaborating with one another. And it's just a growing way of how folks interact, do business, pursue conservation opportunities. They're also generally broadly interested in conservation, not necessarily narrowly on protecting land through written legal agreements and things like that. A lot of turnover happens, and turnover is really bad for small organizations, disproportionately so. So there's a lot of reasons why we see, looking forward into the sustainability of, as Professor Van Abs just nailed it earlier today, we're in the movement building business. We're not in the, what was he used a big word that I can't remember. We're not in the stagnant institutional business. We're sustaining and building a movement for, again, perpetuity. So that's why we're very interested at a trade association level. And we see great opportunity in my region, which is the Mid-Atlantic, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, down through Virginia, West Virginia. New England does this very well. So we know what success looks like. 50 regional conservation partnerships up there. Mid-Atlantic, we're less than half that, despite more people in a roughly comparable land base. So we see opportunity. We really want to work with you all and our member organizations to pursue it. Okay, that's why we are interested. Why would land trusts and their partners, watershed organizations and for-profits, water utilities, local governments, all those other entities be interested? Again, touched on this one, big issues, small organizations. A lot of small problems can be very complicated, especially in the water world. I don't have to go into detail with this audience about why that is, but leveraging complementary capacities is a very attractive reason why organizations would participate in a broader partnership. It's a really safe space for otherwise reluctant partners. Done right, one of these regional conservation partnerships can bring in folks like landowners, participation averse or conscious state, local, federal agencies can see safety in numbers and say, well, that one organization who might really ring us up on some issues is there, but so are some other partners who are more reliably less critical. And that can go a long way to getting some of those key participants in the room. Multiplying impacts, I touched on complementary capacities. Here's a big one. I'll get to more on this later, so I'll sort of save my powder on the fundraising potential. It's a really good way to attract funding. There's some RFPs out there now that are specifically targeting regional conservation partnerships for their support. So I'll get on that a little bit later. Again, touched on strength in numbers. Big one. Small organizations really struggle with inefficient competition. There's competition in a good sense, is that you're raising your game. There's also inefficient competition in that, well, you just are doing the same thing in the same place we are. Let's figure this out in a space where you've got other actors kind of working on you too. And if you are a small organization but want to grow your footprint, say into a watershed or a bigger region, it's a really good way to sort of test the waters and see who are the active players in the space, what niche you might explore, and do it in a way that doesn't commit you to levels of staffing or otherwise engagement that you can't necessarily afford. So that's the why. Always start with the why with these things, with these partnerships. So what do these things look like? Just high level. A lot of this thinking is done by people much smarter than me who have social science and not science backgrounds like I have. Not to belittle social science, but it's different. They kind of do some brain work that we then roll out to our membership. This is some of it. Broadly speaking, people coming together with a purpose and a process for collaboration. Doesn't take much to form one of these things. Don't expect you to read all the fine print on a lot of on the few slides that I have, but there are a lot of different ways to structure a partnership so that it is a coherent entity, but it doesn't necessarily wed partners to a structure that might be more or less what they're after. I'll show some examples of real life of what some of the partnerships look like, and hopefully some of the partnership structures might resonate with you. And maybe something that you recognize or would take back to your organizations or your work. Real broad blood. It's late on a Friday. Information networks on one end of things. Oh, we're trading emails. We know what we're doing. I know what you're doing. This bill is coming up. This hearing is happening. Okay, great. All the way down on the other end of the spectrum, we've got an established staffed 501c3 that is the collaborative, and everyone kind of participates in whatever extent they choose in that organization's work, and a lot of different other options in between. I think that's kind of the nice part of it, is just how flexible you can make these things while still creating something that works. Don't try to read that. It's really, I can't read it on the screen here, let alone all that. The big takeaway points in starting or implementing or considering a partnership is a couple things. It's on the far end of the screen. It's not an organization. The mindset works a little differently, loosely controlled, built on connections and trust more so than hierarchical decision-making. Again, not against hierarchical decision-making. Sometimes you need something done. But there's a process behind it, and some of the partnership structures allow for a little bit more flex in that process. Allows for a little bit more experimentation. It's not a program so much as it can be, I guess, but it's more of a, I know pilots aren't always the greatest things. It allows a space to work on pilots and sort of proof of concept testing and things like that. Versus, proprietary programs that are marketed driven and staffed and fundraised and things like that. Key though, on the side of the screen nearest to me is, are you actually in a partnership? Are you communicating on, again, that's the information sharing that's kind of in the middle. Are you actively competing with one another? Or are you doing things like, hey, I've got a grant idea. What do you say we go in on it together? We have a process for working through what that might look like, all the way on the far high end of trust, and genuinely collaborating on some really tough stuff, because this work is not tough. And I thank you all for doing all that you do for it. Trisha, I'm good with my part. Do you want to, I don't know if we want to shut this is jumping ahead, so I can either leave that very wonky slide up or go somewhere else if you'd like.
You can keep going till I get to my part.
Okay.
Or what do you want to do?
I'm sure folks are done hearing me talk, but if I am happy to kind of play, it's not the worst thing to kind of.
You can jump into
Yeah.
my part and, okay. Sorry, caught me off guard there, but yeah, that's a great idea, because we've been all talking about why, and Andrew brought me here to talk about an example of why. All right, let me go by my notes. Good afternoon, I'm Trisha Aspinall. Thank you for the introduction. I'm the Land Conservation Manager for the Nature Conservancy here in New Jersey. The Nature Conservancy, if you're familiar with us, we are a global organization in over 70 countries. We do have a broad mission to conserve the lands and the waters upon which all life depends. It's a big mission. We do a lot here in New Jersey and all over the world: protect land, freshwater, marine habitat, sequester carbon, and protect the most vulnerable populations from the impacts of climate change. But at our core, we're also a land trust. And one of the many land trusts that Andrew supports here in New Jersey. The Nature Conservancy in New Jersey has protected over 61,000 acres in New Jersey, and it's my job to continue to protect more of the most important lands left in New Jersey. Andrew asked me to speak about our experience with regional conservation partnerships for planning for land protection. Indigenous teachings tell us to make decisions and consider our actions with a goal towards leaving a sustainable world 7 generations into the future. New Jersey has a very limited window to make some very tough decisions. New Jersey will be the first state to reach functional build-out, where all land is either developed or preserved. Right now, New Jersey's roughly 5 million acres can be broken down into thirds. Our latest data shows that we are 1/3 developed, 1/3 preserved, and 1/3 is what we refer to as neither developed nor preserved, available. But what is the right balance of land in its natural state to retain ecosystem function for clean water, habitat connectivity, and climate resilience? We at the Nature Conservancy and many other land trusts use the conservation blueprint to plan for prioritizing the most important lands left in New Jersey. We feel like we have to act now to make sure the most important lands we are protected and form a connected landscape to support a diverse population of plant and animal species. But how do we prioritize what lands to protect? The New Jersey Conservation Blueprint helps us to quickly and visually make landscape scale decisions. Does anybody use New Jersey Conservation Blueprint? Any show of hands? Yeah, great. Well, if you haven't yet, I definitely encourage you to check it out. You can go to njblueprint.org. That's kind of the gateway for all of the tools that are involved in Blueprint. Blueprint's science-based models incorporate factors such as water quality, rare species, climate change resilience, and habitat connectivity. The highest ranked lands are shown in purple and blue, dark blue. Developed lands are masked so that we aren't looking at lands with structures, and preserved lands are excluded so that we can see where we can make connections. Full map, right? TNC prioritizes land protection for climate resilience and habitat connectivity. Talking about habitat connectivity first, this map shows migration patterns on a continental scale, showing birds, amphibians, and mammals. You can see why TNC has made the Appalachians one of 4 globally important places to focus our work. Fragmentation is a threat to connected landscapes. We've heard a lot today about how home rule state and lack of coordinated planning, how home rule state has led to a lack of coordinated planning. Development pressures and the rateable chase often cause situations that create conflict for the most appropriate land use. Housing developments may have slowed a bit, but we still have warehouse pressures intensifying, and local governments are working hard to balance budgets in this economy. We must work now to identify the most important lands left to preserve in a connected landscape while we can. Zooming into the New Jersey Appalachians and Bobcat Alley, you can see how our state plays a small but crucial role in species movement on a continental scale. New Jersey is an important pinch point for larger migrations, and our road network threatens even the smallest migrations. For example, salamanders crossing the road to fulfill life cycle needs. Bobcats, our cute and fuzzy mascot, also need large ranges to fulfill their needs, but they are also an important umbrella species. When we protect bobcat habitat, we protect the habitat of other important species from birds to butterflies. We can also do more than just land protection to advance habitat connectivity goals. We also have the ability to create safer roads, bridges, and culvert crossings for species. By proactively planning with a regional lens, we can best plan for places that both people and species can thrive together. Unfortunately, research has shown that species are not thriving in North America. Page. Species abundance, even in common species, as well as the rare species, is way down. In addition to preserving connected lands, we must identify and preserve lands that have the characteristics needed for plant and animal species to adapt in the face of a changing climate. Dr. Mark Anderson's Center for Resilient Conservation Science predicts that species are moving north and west. His resilient and connected network lands are identified to be the most climate resilient because the data shows they have the characteristics to be able to support the adaptations that plant and animal species are likely to need as the climate changes. TNC has found that species are generally moving north and west and upslope, reacting to changing climate conditions. If we can adequately conserve a variety of connected microclimates, we can conserve nature's stage by allowing space for species to adapt. This climate resilience data is an important criteria for the Nature Conservancy and is reflected in the science that went into making the development of the Conservation Blueprints ecological model. When we use conservation blueprint models to closely evaluate focal landscapes, we look closely at vulnerability and opportunities. In our expanded highlands focal landscapes, we added project areas to focus on protecting a particularly vulnerable landscape to fragmentation. On the Kittatinny Ridge, we are working to increase the buffer to the ridge, protecting more of the unique ridge and valley landscape. In the Southern Highlands, the Southern Highlands are comparatively to the Northern Highlands still very vulnerable to fragmentation. We're focusing our work in this area with a variety of strategies that I'll get into when I get into the how of protecting this, still the why. We also use New Jersey Conservation Blueprint priority models to plan for land protection on a different kind of regional scale. This will be more in the how as well, but we're planning for a pilot of a regional partnership that began with an analysis of highly ranked vacant lands in the Conservation Blueprint ecological model. Looking at ownership patterns, we've identified over 18,000 acres in connections that we could add to state holdings. Originally, we were looking at Bobcat Alley as this connection between the Kittatinny Ridge and the Highlands to provide this area for connection between those two largely preserved landscapes. Now we've expanded Bobcat Alley. What we're referring to Bobcat Alley, you could also call it the New Jersey Appalachians. We've expanded it to focus on an area of 96,000 acres where we're looking to protect an additional 20,000 acres in this landscape, or a total of 50% of Bobcat Alley. We'll come back to this in the how. And I will go back to Andrew.
That's thank you, Tricia. That's just a perfect illustration of what conditions are so ripe for one of these regional conservation partnerships. It's a very great stopping point to say, okay, we've got a purpose here. What was it? People, purpose,
Yeah.
3 Ps.
Process.
Thank you. You got a big piece of that puzzle here. We've got to stop with the alliteration. So I'm just curious, before going too much further, we have some examples of how other parts of Mid-Atlantic region broadly do. Is anyone either considering participating in something that resembles one of these regional conservation partnerships, just out of curiosity or learning at this point? Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. What I'm going to illustrate here will hopefully help in sort of, scoping out what might be something in the region you're working in. A lot of, and first of all, I have to go back to it, but because we kind of messed with our slide order. I'm sorry about that. That's all my fault. I had to mess with things. A lot of the value is in the process in sort of figuring out what is going to work, how are we going to work together, and a lot of people, when they hear region, especially in New Jersey, Highlands, Pinelands, Meadowlands, those are pretty big regions. What I'm used to considering a region for, again, target membership in the Land Trust Alliance on average is 2 staff, $150,000 budget. A little smaller, a little more sub-watershed, maybe not Huck 14, Huck 12. We're talking a little bit, sub Highlands, sub Pinelands that in scale. This is a really great example. So when I had up there the chart of the 6 different types of, and there are more than that, but Lancaster Clean Water Park, it's Lancaster, not Lancaster. Do not say Lancaster, in Lancaster County, the county-based part.
New Jersey.
I could say New Jersey. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. To drive through there on the way home, they'll sense it. No. So Lancaster Clean Water Partners, county government based, and there's a lot of reasons for that. They're on the far end of the organized spectrum. They've got 6 staff, a lot of different partners. They have a board, 501c3, formally established. They've got a very tight, over the years, they've kind of ironed out a very tight sort of purpose, that purpose being 350 miles in paired streams by 2030. It's pretty targeted. That's a good thing to put into a grant application. This is what we're going to do. We're going to do it all by 2040. So there's sort of a stepwise purpose that they've got. Their partners are engaged, that steering committee, then they have action teams, one of which gets people in creeks and those folks who really want to dive in and do some of the work. Their staff teaches classes locally in the county, again, very focused, very relatively. Lancaster's a big county, but it's not Highlands big. They also they compete very strongly for things like regional conservation partnership program dollars. $7 million from a federal agency is no small accomplishment. So they're able to leverage outside resources, bring them into Lancaster and really focus it on the work that their partners want to do. Very, very high, high end, well-established, mature, well-functioning partnership, involves multiple land trusts, state, county, municipal representation, and then water utilities as well. Big player. Also, the plain sect community. I mentioned before, there are some reluctant participants. Doesn't get more reluctant than the plain sect community. They're active and represented in this partnership. It took decades, but they're there, and well represented and are extremely beneficial. Hopefully the benefit goes both ways. Bigger than Highland scale. There's no rules. It says what size these things have to be. The Delmarva Peninsula, right? Starts, it's big. I don't know the exact square miles. This is the Restoration and Conservation Network, DRCN. Their goals, they're a little bit more nascent. They want to just generally create partnerships. The poultry industry is very prominent out there. They're still in the trust building phase with the poultry industry. They're making progress, impressive progress, but they're not quite best friends yet. They have so those are some of the people involved. The people are steering committee of core partners, which includes Fish and Wildlife Service federally, National Park Service has some TNC is very active in that group, Ducks Unlimited, but also local and state government shows up to this. 200 is very big. It's a big, broad collaborative. Again, action groups targeted on urban areas, ag, what are they? Restoration and protection. So they don't just do land protection. That's sort of the overarching thing and why land trusts are attracted to it, because land protection alone doesn't get you terribly far on the Eastern Shore where they're working. You need to have something else that you do. Land trust does convene this. A major measure of success is, do you have someone who's dedicated part of their job to coordinate these things, to bring all the partners together? That is a very tough job. But again, one that appeals to a growing subset of people in the conservation field, to be the one to kind of bring everyone together and figure out common interests. Land trust, but also a federal agency. So there's real weight behind what they do. Again, they get money. INSR is not an easy, just put it in application. It is not easy to get. They've succeeded multiple times in securing INSR awards. And they, like Professor Van Ab said, they promote the heck out of the work that their partners do. A lot of information and knowledge sharing goes on, a lot of communications, and it's all very, very mapping too. More people are visual now than I think maybe ever. They do a really good job of leveraging the GIS capacities that they've got in their partnership to illustrate what it is that everyone's doing. It's a really impressive group too. Slightly smaller scale, heart of Maryland. Anyone been to Antietam Battlefield and some of the slightly western, I'll call it central Maryland. I'm from Baltimore these days, and just big, long state. We're talking about the middle of it, the heart. This is a little bit more an accessible model to folks who are just starting up or starting to brainstorm around what a regional conservation partnership might entail. Land Trust Executive Director does it all by himself. He's the coordinator. He's also superhuman, as many of these folks are, but he is just naturally skilled at figuring out who might be the one to help them solve a problem. Who might go talk to this landowner about trees. I don't have that in, he doesn't have that in his knowledge base, but I know a guy that does. They're a little bit more information network at this stage, but they've already sort of coalesced around a process. They're going to develop a watershed plan. That's their organizing principle. They're also starting to form these ad hoc focus committees, expanding geographies a little bit. Again, it's a one-person organization. So he's doing a lot. They're also beginning to do things like farming out different areas of the work, again, around watershed protection. He does the easement outreach. A lot of landowners don't want to hear about conservation easements, but they might want tree planting. They might want technical assistance, consulting referrals. And this is a group that kind of says, well, it's not the land trust, because a lot of landowners don't want to hear from a land trust. They will hear from the Heart of Maryland Conservation Alliance, because that includes a lot of other people that might be better for me. That's a very hard map to read, but it's a very pretty part of the world. If y'all get a chance to go, definitely recommend it. Maybe not supposed to play favorites. This is the West Virginia Safe Water Conservation Collaborative. It's going to be my favorite. This one is, I can't say enough about these folks. West Virginia is a very hard place to do conservation. If anyone's, they have active legislation to roll back the ability to do easements at all. Very challenging circumstances. These folks are rock stars in this work. I am not. I didn't even finish the first bullet on there. Just sort of dead ends at 2. They want to do a lot of things. Their purpose is to respond to a sort of contamination event. West Virginia 2014, massive chemical spill in the Elk River threatened Charleston state capital's drinking water. Actually got some legislation passed to nudge that state towards proactively planning for protecting of its drinking water intakes. The catch was there was no money behind any of those plans. It's the familiar theme that I'm hearing here today, not just New Jersey. So this group said, okay, we're concerned about the vulnerability of the upper Potomac, which is where they get their drinking water in they call it the panhandle of Eastern West Virginia. Might as well be Maryland. Don't tell them that. So they kind of said, all right, strategic plan. We've got a lot of people interested. Threaten someone's drinking water and they get very interested very fast. Had a lot of initial interest, as all the thumbs up kind of illustrates. But now they needed the work on the process part. Like, okay, great. A lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm. How are we going to do this? There are water utilities in the room, very active, very concerned. Conservation groups, maybe less of a player here. An advocacy group, West Virginia Rivers Coalition was the major convener. Squeaky wheel in the state capitol, but they're also extremely effective organizers, and we're able to kind of put a more friendly face on their work by convening this collaborative. Again, a lot of same themes. They figured out process subcommittees, get the expertise in the room doing what they do. Strategic plan to kind of coordinate everything, and doing a lot of the same things: tree planting, outreach about farm bill programs, things of that nature. It's just how to do it in a way that's most effective and efficient for the members of the partnership is what they figured out. Oh yeah, they got a lot of money to do it at the end of the day. It took them about 5 years. Land Trust Alliance gave them a grant of about $30,000 a year for 4 years. That's all it took. And now they've got major multi-million-dollar every year funding coming in to do what they're doing. If I'm not beating you over the head with that theme enough, this is a great way to get support for the work that might otherwise feel tenuous or difficult to fund. Strength in numbers. I'm happy to touch more on partnerships now and just keep rolling. I've only got 2 slides left, unless I can just keep rolling on this. This is impossible to read, first of all, and I'm sorry for that. These slides are all available take home, I'm hoping, and that's really why I'm bothering to put these on here. It's not so much for you to look at today, but for you to take home. And if you're considering one of these things, a lot of different options are open to regional conservation partnerships in form of fundraising. In-kind partner contributions, I'm just reading you what these slices of the pie say. Agency, public grants, state, federal, local, private foundation grants, individual donors. I'll get to that in a second. Businesses often invest in, especially ones that are water focused. Conservation finance mechanisms are open in some cases. The downside is the projects are not necessarily simple. You've got a lot of partners, all who should have a stake in the process. This is what a project budget that came to us, we're a granting entity as well. This is all the stuff they want to do. This is all the stuff they want. I think I anonymized the names, a few of them at least. And again, having someone with grant writing and grant securing experience in the partnership is very valuable, because these things can get out of control pretty quick. So that's just a word of caution. With more diversity in funding streams, the more complexity you encounter when you're going to get money. This is one from New England. I said New England does this very, very well. They've got just speaking of home rule, we've got a home rule culture in New Jersey. They're very proud of their home rule culture up in New England as well. So a lot of similarities. So I wanted to make sure to highlight this particular, the Sebago Clean Water Partners. I might be saying that wrong. I'm not going to Maine anytime soon. It should be all right. Partners and funders. So on the far side, that's the Chesapeake. And I don't work in New England. I can butcher their names. You see the big takeaway though is that different members of the collaborative can tap different sources of funding and bring it all back to a common pot. If the trust is there, remember that one slide, trust is a big deal, and sharing funding is a big step in terms of trust in a partnership. Land trust can tap foundation funding more easily than some. The Forest Service, did that line up right? It kind of did. Forest Service can bring federal forest legacy money, and they have succeeded in that up there. That involves the state as well. Towns can tap community foundations pretty readily up there. Yeah, they have some, they also, like in New Jersey, have dedicated sources of funding. And they can get pretty creative. Municipalities can be pretty effective fundraisers themselves if they're in the partnership. Oops. Last thing that I'll say on the fundraiser, this is a different model, different partnership. This is the Sebago Clean Water Partners. They, because they formed a 501c3, they solicit donations from the public. It's very, very interesting, especially for organizations that might struggle to attract members, might have either a niche focus or a niche geography that doesn't attract the level of support they need to do what they want to do. Forming this Clean Water Partners, money literally sorry, before I even said the pun, water pours into this organization from the public. Just because they've invested in building the partnership and putting in the different levels of attracting private dollars into the space. It's a very safe, very well-known partnership that folks feel comfortable donating into, businesses as well. Bit of a status symbol in this particular example for everyone in the town who has a business donates to the Clean Water Partners. It's just another way to diversify revenue sources. Any questions before we're just kind of rolling along and you're being very gracious, but any questions so far based on what we've presented or guys, you're way off base, anything like that?
I was just gonna make a comment. I saw in another presentation, from a drinking water standpoint, they were talking about Sebago Lake, how it's like one of the only, I don't know, there's only like 50 permits in the nation where there's almost no water treatment whatsoever. The water's so clean, they just pump it out of the lake, chlorinate it, and it's drinkable.
And it's kind of funny. I thought about it in the context of never waste a good crisis. They had some threats to that drinking water source, and they're very proud of that. So I think there was active effort to say never waste a good crisis. Let's make sure we don't lose that status. Yeah, it's impressive. And I forgot that was them, but yeah, they rarely need it. The treatment costs being next to nothing. That's not an insignificant thing to be able to say. Yeah.
Just wondering if you've looked at regional approaches, such as what's being done largely in the Northeast for birds, and where there may not be quite as much completely contiguous areas as what you're having in the Appalachians, Bobcat Alley, but where the sum total of it all is making a meaningful contribution regionally to the bird populations, to maintaining the Atlantic flyway, but then also locally, the contributions that you're getting through that to water quality, watershed preservation. So it's those kinds of regional approaches that are more dispersed and may require some kind of bigger scale coordination.
Can you just try and repeat?
Yes.
briefly
Oh, of
for
course. Yes.
online people? Thank you.
The question is, roughly paraphrased, have we seen examples of when we've sort of not necessarily geographically limited, but dispersed maybe checkerboard based on a flyway or a resource that's maybe otherwise dispersed? and its protection. I went back to this slide on the DRCN because Audubon is a major supporter and participant in this particular network. It's very checkerboard out there in terms of what they target, what they protect, but they've got such a giant region. Delmarva's huge. That they can kind of pick and choose based on where the best nesting sites, where the flat stopover sites exist, that they've built that into some of their working groups. Is so, okay, land prioritization is going to be challenging. It's not just the Chop Tank watershed. It's not just the Eastern Shore watershed. So they've been able to do that fairly effectively. It's not easy though, because everyone wants the map, right? And they want to say, let's
for
play
that
around.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so interestingly, in using the conservation blueprint, there are new tools where you can map and through MODIS, which is a network, that you can track species movement, bats, birds, see how they utilize habitats. So you can have that kind of data supported or data driven approach
Mhm.
that can help you to select the parcels that will have that habitat value and understanding how the species use it and move between habitats.
I didn't include it here. A lot of these collaboratives can go contract with mapping. Conservation Innovation Center is a big one that will do parcel prioritization on a large scale. And they can kind of say, here's this crazy region that we drew up. We have partners here. This is what it is. And then they can then sort of overlay all the different priorities, all the whys, the purposes that they have. And there are certain mapping entities that have gotten really good at sort of making parcels or areas pop based on that. So they can get fairly sophisticated in how they do, or they can keep it very simple. It's just a matter of what their priorities tend to be. Let me get out of the way, Tricia. So I just wanted to make sure everyone.
Yeah. And yeah, I just learned about some of those tracking abilities during a webinar recently. And it's interesting how like avian species can skip and they can use that dispersed habitat. But I think we at TNC are deliberately choosing to focus on the bobcat so that we could build that very deliberately connected so that it can support anything that needs, like bobcats need, what is it, 7 miles a day or something like this.
Range.
Yeah, their range is very big, just in a day. And then, just salamanders that need to cross the road. Like by building that connected habitats, we can provide for the birds that don't need the direct connection, but also, provide for a wide variety, that hence the bobcat umbrella. So let's go back. Yeah, bobcat umbrella. Which one do I want? I think this one. We'll do this one. Maybe that one. The map is what we need. So the first part of my talk, I talked about why we need a regional conservation partnership. And this is going to focus on the how and who and why we are about to be Andrew's favorite RCP. But just to jump back with one thing that Andrew started with, I can no longer say I'm in my early 40s, but I agree that this generation of conservation professionals does like collaboration. And I love working with partnerships. Ever since I came to TNC, that's been a big goal of mine, is to work very closely with my partner land trusts. I think we can accomplish a lot more together, just speaking very generally, but let's get into the specifics. I mean, TNC is lucky. We are very well staffed and funded comparatively to other land trusts. We still struggle and we work really hard for that, but we still don't have enough capacity to reach our lofty goals alone. So we need to collaborate. We need these partnerships. We need to match strengths with our partners. So one of the things we did is we brought Andrew in because he's an expert in this. We wanted his help guiding us to do some collaboration. He's showed us a lot of examples of how other land trusts throughout the Mid-Atlantic work together. And we wanted to, benefit from his expertise and learn a lot from what the LTA does. So Andrew talked a lot about, where am I here? We talked about our purpose and our why, but we need that people. We need people with a common vision. And right now we can count on the fact that our partner land trusts have that common vision. We might have, specific project areas, but we're all trying to protect land. And we need to develop a process to collaboratively accomplish our goals. And what is that goal? I kind of went over it really quickly. But we have a goal, TNC New Jersey has a goal to work with our partners to protect 20,000 acres in what we refer to as Bobcat Alley, also the New Jersey Appalachians. They're one and the same for us. Bobcat Alley started off as just this little connection, but we love the name so much, we're calling the whole thing Bobcat Alley. It's just a great marketing situation there. But there's more to that goal. A campaign is coming, but there's a lot of research that's gone into something that we're working on with one of our other partner land trusts where we want to, and that 20,000 acres is, we're trying to do that by 2030. Okay. The campaign that's coming is we would like to, by 2050, protect 50% of the most important lands left to preserve in New Jersey by 2050. So that's a huge goal. Both of these goals are really big goals. Can we do this alone? Absolutely not. Even being a really well-funded, well-staffed land trust, we can't do it alone. So how can we accomplish that goal? We need coordinated efforts with our partner land trusts. We need that purpose, people, and process situation. We need purpose. We need that common vision and goal. A lot of our land trusts, we've already been, socializing the idea of this very nuanced 50 by 50. It's not going to be 50% of the state. A lot of states are talking about 30 by 30. You all know that New Jersey is already well past 30 by 30 in 2024, even before 2024. We're at, as I talked about before, we're already a third preserved in New Jersey. So we're better than a lot of the other states, other regional conservation. So we've already surpassed that 30 by 30. So we want something really ambitious and really important. So we're going to take the best of what's available. So these lands that are ranked, highest is the purple and the dark blue is the second highest. 50% of those, we're going to try to achieve protection of 50% of what's in purple and dark blue. I think we can do it by 2050. It's an ambitious goal. It ends up being something around 500,000 acres, but with our partners, we think we can do it. Not just in the apps, that's statewide. So how can we do that? Common purpose, common vision and goal. People, collaborating and matching our strengths with our partner land trusts. Process, we need that coordinated landowner outreach so that we can get in touch with the, land preservation is hard, right? Because we're not in the business of condemnation. We work with willing sellers. So it all comes down to having a strong approach to landowner outreach. This is what we all struggle with in land protection. A lot of the most important lands left to preserve, they've been approached multiple times because we've been at this a long time now, So we need to find new and innovative ways to reach landowners and have better financial incentives and to really tell the story, that why that I spent probably too much time talking about. We need to communicate that why. Why is it important? Why do we want to buy your land? It's not because we're trying to amass this network of things for ourselves. It's for the benefit of nature and people. So we want this coordinated landowner outreach, and we want to have partnership with the state. I talked about, we have this, we want to have a really strong collaborative message to landowners, want to have a team effort. So what our regional conservation partnership is going to look like in Northwest New Jersey is going to be all of our partner land trusts working together, having a common database of landowners that we're talking to, meeting periodically to check in with each other. Okay, you're working on this section, I'm working on that section. We're going to do this kind of strategy here, but we're going to work on that kind of strategy there. And one of the other things that we're working on with LTA, thankfully, we have access to them in New Jersey, is they're helping to help us strengthen our strategies for reaching landowners. LTA works with landowners all over the country, so they've provided us with an array of strategies so we can better reach landowners and have a better message. We're getting research on trends. We are doing some advocacy for some financial benefits. Like there's got to be a way for us to compete. You know, land preservation is not only hard in terms of reaching landowners, it's slow because we have to do due diligence and work with state grants and et cetera. So we need some kind of financial advantage so that when we go to landowners, we can have an offer that competes with warehouses, because when you're competing with with a commercial interest, they can move faster and they can really offer more money. We don't have that advantage. You know, we're accountable to our donors and we're accountable to our grant funders. So we have to follow a particular process. And then we're going to get a grant, hopefully. So we'll have some financial incentives for ourselves. We're like literally talking in real time about how this regional conservation partnership is going to go for a grant so that we could all work together and have funding for that. We're also planning to work directly with the state. Oops, wrong way. So we have particular land protection priorities where we're trying to do acquisition for the land trust, but we're also hoping to do a pilot where we're working directly with the state to identify properties that make sense as additions to existing state land holdings. So we can do the outreach, because the state, they're stretched thin too, but they have land managers, they have funding. If we can target landowners who make sense for additions to state land holdings, we can send some good landowners to the state and have them talking so that, you know, with land trusts, it's hard for us to know like who's going to be the end owner. We don't always have the resources to manage properties ourselves. So sometimes the best landowner is in addition to an existing state land holding. We're also going to work very closely with, I don't really need a map for this part. We're also going to work very closely with the Farmland Preservation Program. We want to have options. When we talk to landowners, we want to talk about a menu of options. There's many ways to protect your land. Not a lot of people doing conservation easements. There's a lot of requirements that come with that, but farmland preservation is a great option because it's not necessarily climate resilient forest, but it's still a permeable landscape for habitat connectivity. It's better than a warehouse. We also want to work with forestry. Might not be ready to protect your land today, but do you want to do a forest stewardship plan? That's an option too. So I kind of want to end it there and end with a question. What else should we be thinking about? And if you're from a watershed organization, how can we work with you? Like, what should we be asking you if you'd like to be involved in something like this? Or any just questions? Yeah.
I think the forest stewardship plan, because I live up there, a lot of it is wood. And folks don't really know a lot about the forest stewardship plan.
Yeah.
And that could be an intermediate step for people to agree that they want to keep it as it is.
Yeah.
And then perhaps an easement down the road and they're a little more comfortable with that.
Exactly.
Not all publicized.
Yeah.
You get a handful of people when State Forest Service comes in. It's something.
Yeah, that's exactly what we want to do when we're talking.
I'm sorry, could you just repeat that too?
Yeah, the gentleman was encouraging us to consider forest stewardship, and that, you know, that reiterating the part that, you know, if we can use that as an introduction, maybe when they're ready down the line, because obviously we only want to work with willing sellers. So we do often talk about forest stewardship plans as a way to just get your foot in the door with them and with us. You know, it goes both ways, and that could be like, okay, well, we kept protected as a forest. Now let's protect it permanently with the deed restriction.
There is an out-of-pocket cost to that.
Mm.
You know, cost me over $1,000 to get a little piece of land for bigger forest plots, forest reds do a lot of work. Have you folks ever considered a grant program, individual landowners to pick up that cost?
That might be worth considering. I'll take that back.
I mean, because right now, a lot of folks have woodland management plans
Mhm.
because they sell firewood.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you've got so much firewood up there, dead ash is like all over the place. But there's no financial out for them to enjoy the tax benefits of the woodland management plan.
And the suggestion was, would we consider grants for, to fund landowners to do forest stewardship plans? Where are you located?
Sussex County, right by Kemah Lake,
Which, township?
Hampton Town.
Hampton, okay. Yeah, our partner Land Conservancy in New Jersey does great work there.
I work for the food shed lines.
Oh, nice. Yeah, wonderful group.
Yes, they are.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have that colored code. Is that just forest? Is it any farms? What have you identified? I mean, what's the
On this
color
one?
and stuff?
On this one in particular? Okay, so this is the New Jersey Conservation Blueprint. So this is the ecological model, and the purple indicates the highest ranked lands for ecological resources. And that ecological resources brings in a number of things: water quality, rare species, climate resilience. It's a number of factors that go into that ranking. So we use this as a way to hyper focus on where we need to make that next step for protection. So we know that, you know, if this is not, doesn't have a ranking, it's already protected or it's developed. In this case, I can see that it's a preserve farm. These are preserved lands up here. It also would mask out anything that has structures on it. So we can really fixate on, okay, we need to focus here. We need to focus here to make this connection.
Something I just want to touch on very quickly and regarding that question, that's a national challenge with national programs is there are upfront costs that may not get paid back. And that's a major barrier. One of the things I would challenge, especially folks in this room who represent organizations that do advocacy. Land trusts are generally reluctant to do advocacy. There's nothing like land to fight over, and so many hesitate to engage. Something we're considering that the state of Virginia does and a few other states do, they have tax credits available for this kind of work that provides a match source that privately funded, they call it seed funding for some of those we might consider prospective conservation projects that can fund some of the upfront, like forest management plan, that can fund some of that directly, take the burden off the landowners and just reduce the barrier to doing some of that. I would challenge the folks in this room who have an advocacy orientation to consider what that might look like in New Jersey. That's because a lot of our members are dipping toes into that world, but we're not there yet.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
And I love the structured regional collaboration for regions. One, I mean, I'm working for a watershed association, it's also a land trust in the Upper Raritan River and Island. So we do have strong partnerships, but there's no real structure. I mean, the partners we work with are looking to preserve land in the Highlands. We each kind of have our little bit of niche, we are, of course, are focused on lands that are riparian, that have, offer strong protection for water resources. Some of our partners are looking at more, the farmland preservation, so those are their strengths and areas of focus. Unfortunately, land preservation can often be very opportunistic, and when you're working in kind of these silos, you have limited options, right? So you may not be going after projects, get the biggest bang for the buck, that may not be the best option, but you take what you can get because you may have green acres funds expire. You want to be able to do some preservation. And so, again, you may not be as effective as you could be if you didn't have those ongoing conversations with partners to help you identify the opportunities that are out there. I love the idea of tracking, where you can put in notes like we've approached this landowner, we've approached that, because then as a partner, you could access that and say, okay, that's a project we would love to contribute to. Let's get in touch and see how we can be involved with that.
Yeah.
Be able to leverage those resources better with those partners that are working really for the same goals. As you are. And also with your open space municipal partners. I mean, a lot of those partners, they lack some of the expertise for land preservation. You know, they need consulting services. You know, we work with NJCF as a consultant, another fantastic partner in New Jersey. But our municipal partners in particular, they lack that expertise. So they're often missing opportunities as well because they didn't know how to go after that state funding. You know, they don't know how to approach a landowner or what they need to do to start that process. So that's another place where we really think leverage more funding is trying to, you know, get that conversation, you know, regular monthly meetings or what have you with your municipal partners, your state partners, your other nonprofit land trusts and everyone, county, you know, in one room and really discuss what the options and the equitable laws are. So this is fantastic. Inspiration.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to sum up that you were just for those people who are online, that you were just mentioning that in order to get the biggest bang for your buck, it's really important to be able to have those conversations with all the different groups that are around you, to be able to keep open communication and to be able to discuss maybe what's out there so that you're not necessarily going after pieces of land that aren't necessarily the highest grade of habitat because you have a grant that is closing and you need to apply for something. So just being able to have open dialogue is really helpful. All right. Yes, sir.
I just want to second what both of you said, and the advantages of being able to reach out to landowners in different ways and also be able to track that, you know, through some database kind of approach to get landowners on board in whatever may be most interesting to them, but can have additional knock-on benefits. And so besides forest management, you can have wetlands, stream management and stewardship. And for aspects of wetlands, like vernal pool, for construction and restoration, or the wildlife tracking and how the wildlife is. So just different ways of getting at people. And also I'd encourage you to use different potentially interlocking tools. So like along with the state conservation blueprint, that you could use the EPA and bioethics and use its morphological spatial pattern analysis layers to look at contiguous areas and of core habitat connectivity zones and you know, edge zones and so on, and tools from the Northeast Conservation Planning Atlas and so on, Living Atlas, and a lot of these tools can come together to give a more holistic picture of how the natural resources of forest, wetland, stream, riparian area, habitat, connectivity all interrelate, and to help to strengthen our awareness of high payoff places to conserve.
Yeah, and I just want to add to that, probably the best spatial tool that you just didn't happen to mention, but I'm sure you know, the Connecting Habitats Across New Jersey, the Change tool is another fantastic mapping tool that I think incorporates a lot of what you mentioned. It's very New Jersey specific, and we have built that into Conservation Blueprint as well, and it really aligns really well with TNC's Resilient Lands, Resilient Climate Science as well. They're all such great tools, and I'm going to be sure to check out some of the ones you just
It's
mentioned.
great to see these tools
Yeah,
build over time, and so that change and conservation focal areas can incorporate these other approaches like the morphological spatial analysis.
yeah.
That's good.
We have so much data. Now we just have to get to action. Yeah.
Yes, had to.
And I just had a question too, which is a little bit maybe off topic, I'm not sure. But with what I do, I've noticed that over the last 10, 12 years that we've had a massive boom in invasive species. And so my question is, how are you dealing with habitat degradation for conserved lands that are no longer functioning as high quality habitat?
Oh, look at the time. No,
Yeah, well, that's a tough one, because that, you have to protect the land so that it doesn't become something worse than invasive, but that's like the next step, which is the stewardship component, and that really gets into the long-term viability of land trusts, because someone needs to manage the land,
Mhm.
whether it's state parks, fish and wildlife, or a land trust, someone needs to manage it. And if we don't have continued funding to do great stewardship work after we do the protection work, it's still better than if it was going to be impervious surface, but it's not great. So that's the part we still have to figure out.
Right, because the issue is you preserve this beautiful land and then nobody touches it. But then within a few years, you've got vines growing up all the trees, you've got Bradford pear on 1-foot centers, and it's just overwhelming.
We think about that a lot in the national context. New Jersey might have a worse invasive species problem than most states, but it's not unique in that it deals with it on protected and unprotected property. What I'll say is that a couple things done right, and Land Trust Alliance puts out all these standards and practices and accreditation requirements, a lot of different things that Mara can tell you all about from the other end, but of the business. But it done right, land trusts have a stewardship endowment on every single property that they hold, and they use that endowment when things like invasive species come calling, when someone violates the terms of their permanent protection. They tap into that to do what they need to do to keep the property in whatever condition it's supposed to be in. And certainly we've come a long way in figuring out how to support land trust, guide, coach, teach them on how to do more water quality focused land protection, what it means to sustain buffers, what it means to keep streams shaded, and get a little more sophisticated about best management practices, things of that nature. We've got a ways to go. Invasive species, whether they're aquatic or terrestrial, will continue to push the capacity that these organizations have. Partnerships are a great way to leverage their risk, though, and we're all about leveraging risk. Business of perpetuity means you need to have really stable organizations. We're hyper focused on organizations that are going to be there where the tarantula is at the end of days. That's what we do.
Put in a plug for the New Jersey Native Plant Society. So, because they're working on invasive plant species and both removal of that native plantings that will sustain non-invasive species. It's an example of, and they've got great resources there for annual meetings coming up for Saturday of March, and an example of a great kind of partner potentially to cultivate, and that can be a part of this stewardship program.
Is
And-
Friends Focal Valley Open Space here? I'm just curious because they have an invasive
Friends of
species
Focal.
strike team. Valley Open Space.
Oh, they-
Have been-
I didn't, they're not here today. I
Okay.
did not see
Okay.
them. But the comment was that the New Jersey Native Plant Society is working on this, and they have a lot of good information that they are providing. So for the question about invasive plants, you may want to check out the New Jersey Native Plant Society and their upcoming, is it their annual meeting
First-
or
Yeah, for
yeah.
Saturday.
Okay.
of March.
first Saturday of
Session.
March? Okay, great. Thank you. Yes, sir.
That's kind of been my pet peeve with land acquisition where I live, because some of my favorite hiking places as a youngster were just great, never any ticks. Now it's full of barberry and it's full of limes.
Mhm.
And the connection between that is a public health problem, and it's a serious problem. There's dozens of people up in Sussex County that are disabled for the rest of their lives because they don't know it, and it's a problem that needs to be addressed as a public health issue, not just as an invasive plant issue.
Right.
Well said.
So
That's not a question, sorry.
just the comment that invasive species, the barberry up north is bringing in ticks that are giving limes. So, well, if there's no other questions or comments, thank you both so much for your wonderful presentation. Yeah, I greatly appreciate it. Thank you. All right.